one of the things I like about Elon, and he's very much in alignment with Jordan Peterson, is like Jordan Peterson said something once, and I think that Elon encapsulates this. It's like, in order to think properly, I need to be willing to insult you. And it's a really powerful statement because that's what Elon does on like this grand scale. Like he has, and he bought Twitter, so basically he could say this stuff at scale. At like, I want to tell the world, and I don't want to be censored.
All right, we are back. Alex, I'm liking the new setup. What'd you do there?
I've been kind of working on it for a little while. It'd be funny if you came over here and saw it, because I'm basically enclosed in cubicles from an old office that I had in my living room, because I don't really watch TV. So I basically created another podcast studio in my living room in my house.
Because why not?
I don't watch TV. I don't have guests. Guests come over. We usually go out and stuff. I don't know. I got a little space over there. This just seemed more appropriate to use the space for this.
So the next time I come over, I'll just have dinner in your podcast studio.
Yes. We can set it all up right here.
That's great. Hey, listen, man, I want to get started with one of the most topical things right now in everyone's mind, from not only the agent perspective, but also the public, is interest rates. And not just interest rates in terms of how they affect your ability to buy a house, meaning mortgage interest rates, but the Fed and the interest rate at large, and the interest rate that obviously drives our economic process. You see it starting to dip down a little bit. What is your impact, or what is your thought on the impact of it coming down a bit, and its impact also more specifically on our real estate and prices, and more importantly, obviously, affordability for the average home buyer?
So there's a couple of questions there. It's tough. It's kind of like always seemingly a little bit of a lagging, I wouldn't use the word indicator, but or effect. So right now we're in third quarter in Florida, and for this area, it's always a slower time. I mean, we did 21 closings last month, so it's not like it's dead, but certainly slower. That much of a lowering of the interest rate. Oh, he didn't lower, but the market, when the Fed lowers or keeps the rate the same or raises it, doesn't always, as you know, like have a direct effect on the mortgage market. That's a little bit more of a actual market rather than price fixing, which is, I think, a little bit we can talk about with the Fed lowering interest rates or raising interest rates and
for those,
basically
Alex,
dictating.
For those that are not intimately familiar with that difference, that correlation between the Fed's interest rate and how it affects or does or doesn't affect a mortgage interest rate, can you speak to that a little bit?
I know enough to be dangerous. That essentially, what we're talking about here is the FOMC meeting, the Federal Open Market Committee, which is basically all the Federal Reserve chairmen from around the country. And, Chairman Powell is like the head of the Fed, but there's all these different areas. I think there's 13 or something of them. And they all get together and decide whether or not to raise or lower interest rates, which essentially is, not to get too deep into the weeds with this and even lose myself or the audience in it, but they basically set the price of money for interbank lending, as well as how much it costs the U.S. government to borrow from the Fed and to put money into the Treasury, and that affects the bond markets and so forth. So not, again, to get too much deep into weeds with that, it does have this trickle-down effect for the cost of money, and interest rates are the cost of money. If you want to borrow $100,000, what is the interest rate on that over a 30-year amortization? Back in the COVID time, it was down to 2.5%, because the Federal Reserve had it at basically 0% that they would loan money out, and then the difference on that, think of it, if the Fed was at 0 and mortgage rates were at 2.5, the spread is the 2.5 that the mortgage companies are making. So they're loaning directly from the Fed and then loaning it out to you and I. Well, actually, usually sometimes goes through a couple other channels. But does that explain it? I hate to get into that because it's so kind of deep.
So yeah, that's very much the way I see it in terms of what interest rates are. I've always seen it as interest rates are basically the mothership at the very top, right? And then from there, it starts to affect different markets in different ways. So your savings account, your interest rate, and what it costs you to buy a house, all of these things are not exactly correlated to the interest rates, the Fed's interest rates, but certainly have some effect at some point, right? So we're always looking for those rates to come down, and that's usually an indicator that interest rates to purchase a home are going to come down. Not always, and not in the exact amount, but certainly is a good sign. And that's obviously what everyone's looking for right now is to help with the affordability of purchasing a home. Because when you combine the higher prices that we've had, the higher market that we've had, especially here in Florida, we haven't really seen much of a downtick. It's really been either flat or it's continued to appreciate in certain markets, certain type of product, et cetera. But by and large, let's call it flat, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And then, when the interest rate goes from 8 to 6%, that makes a huge difference in your ability to maybe be able to say, okay, now it's the right time. Now we can afford it. The dollar amount makes sense. And I'll be able to qualify to purchase X amount. And so that's kind of where we are right now. And that's what hopefully we'll see. Although I have seen that inventory has increased, which is not a bad thing because we were also lacking in a lot of quality product that we could show our customers that was out there. There weren't really that many choices, although it slowed down in terms of the frenzy, certainly that we had 2 or 3 years ago, considerably, of course, because of that affordability. The lack of, or the inventory of homes really hasn't come back up in a meaningful way, but now it seems to indicate otherwise. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And to double click a little bit into, I don't want to go too deep into the interest rate thing, but it's kind of ironic that it's like people want lower interest rates because it's cheaper money, so you can buy more. However, the effects of that have, especially when interest rates were down in the 2% to get a home loan, that's what created the boom, and that's what created values doubling, over a 2 or 3 year span, 2.5 year span, in some areas tripled the home prices. And that then creates this unaffordability, right? So the low interest rates, everybody could get a home, or a lot of people, more people could get a home. They could leverage more money, which created prices going up dramatically. And then it creates this unaffordability. And so now people want interest rates to come back down so the homes become affordable again. You see where I'm going with this? And it creates this kind of like spiral into, in effect, homes not being affordable because they go up so fast because everybody jumps back in. So kind of coming back, because of it's like expansion and contraction. I believe in that life is like expansion, contraction. We breathe, and I don't mean to get all ethereal, but I do believe in expansion, contraction. And so there was this massive expansion, and then the contraction is happening now. So we're seeing just year over year, Eddie, in pretty much. And I did this analysis yesterday on Martin, just our areas down here, Martin, St. Lucie, and Palm Beach County. And in every county, single-family homes under $800,000, the inventory doubled. Now, because, like, for instance, in Palm Beach County, where the inventory was so low, at I think it was 1.4 months of inventory, right? Which is under 3 months of inventory is a full seller's market. And that's deep into a seller's market. The inventory doubled. So you're still just barely in a seller's market. I think it's like 3.2 months of inventory or something like that. So you're pretty close to a seller's market. Now, if you look at Port St. Lucie, Martin County is a little different. They're all a little different. I don't want to get too much into the weeds. Maybe we'll throw some graphs up here to show you, what I'm talking about. But yeah, the inventory's doubled, Eddie. Basically, year over year, the inventory's doubled, and that's kind of significant. Especially, lastly, I'll just kind of end on this. The condo, villa, and townhome market has really been hit because if we take this other effect of inflation, which really is insurance, and also we're here in Florida, so there's been a couple hurricanes. Hey, we've dealt with this for years and years and years, but that creates another layer of inflation or an area that inflation shows up in. And because these condos, villas, and townhome communities, not all of them really manage their funds well. They got hit with these new state mandates for the engineering after like the Surfside collapse down in Miami. So, the insurance rates have just gone up dramatically. I was actually playing golf with a commercial insurance guy the other day, and he's like, there's basically two for commercial insurance policies for condos and that in Florida. It's like Citizens, and I forget what the other one was, but he's like, it's just not a lot of competition, right? So when you don't have competition is what helps to drive prices down, right? And if you don't have competition combined with inflation, what that effect has been on inventory in the condo, villa, and townhome has been sometimes a tripling, Eddie. So we're seeing buyers markets in some of the areas for condos and villas and townhomes. So some interesting effects from interest rates and inflation. So
no, I want to dovetail off that because you brought up a really couple of good points that I heard there. Is yes, the last one you made about the condo market and the insurance affecting the associations heavily. That makes it a little bit more challenging to be a consumer of a condo in South Florida right now or in Florida at all. Really, it does. Almost to the point where you almost have to reconsider it even more so. And that's in, my opinion, I would, because now, before you just had to make sure that the condo association had, the proper, it was a healthy association, and it had money. And of course, these are all checks that a mortgage broker or a lender rather is going to make sure that are in place before you get the loan, right? They want to make sure because of course they have skin in the game because they're loaning you the money to buy the place, that all these things are healthy and in good standing. And so insurance is always one of the top ones. What does it cost? What kind of insurance do they have in place? And we're in such a place of uncertainty in that little market there and cost in terms of what those policies cost, that I've seen the stories. The monthly rates of HOAs have continued to go up. And if you're, in a position where you've already owned the place and your only expense is really the HOA, some of these HOA fees are approaching what would be considered a mortgage, over $1,000 a month to live there. And that's the portion that you don't have control over. So it's important to know that you are rolling the dice more and more right now when you're buying a condo. And it doesn't say it's not a good opportunity or it's not the right opportunity for you. You just have to be really mindful, especially those larger, I guess you could also argue the smaller ones, because then you're more susceptible, right? The payment might go up more because there's not as many units to spread that risk across. But then the flip side is if you're in a really large community, they tend to have a lot more amenities, and those amenities cost more to maintain. And there's more roofs in that community, right? And so there's more roofs to maintain. And now with the water side or surf side, but what I meant by water side is, anything along the water or along the ocean that's could be susceptible now to erosion. People are paying more attention to that, right? So there's going to be more sensitivity towards that, which means that could equate to a higher premium for their insurance, which then trickles down to the individual owner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really a dicey situation to be a condo owner right now. And as I'm sure as new rules come down to protect the homeowner, right? That all that's going to mean is that it's going to be more expensive to potentially live there. Yeah, and
Nailed it. Those are the concerns that people have, for sure. Yeah. And it's like you mentioned it. It's like you mentioned, like, there's like, and as I'm doing the videos, Eddie, I'm like, this is a buyer's market. Like, you buy in a buyer's market and you sell in a seller's market. But it's still, the fear is there. It's such a hard thing to do, even though like I guess on a principle level, like, buy in a buyer's market. Like, that's where the opportunities are. There's people that want to get out. And it's like, yeah, but do I want to get in to that scenario that you just outlined, right? Like, that's a challenge.
And that's usually the entry point. Not for everyone, of course. This is not a generalization, but it's certainly a very nice entry point into the Florida market when you're coming from up north. So you've got your home up there. The kind of the trajectory usually is, let's buy a little condo. Let's see if we like it, right? We can spend half the year there. And so that's always the dipping your toe into the water kind of scenario for people that are looking to move to Florida eventually, is going into the condos because they're less expensive, easier to maintain. There's nothing to maintain. You just lock your door and shutter up your windows, and we'll see you in 3 or 4 months. And so that's been the entry point I've seen for a lot of people that are looking to move into the area.
Yeah.
I know.
We'll see. We'll see how it plays out, man. We'll see. Time will tell. Always does. I felt like that was pretty, yeah, like we'd beat it more.
Right.
If we go any more into that, then I'll get on a stump about inflation. Maybe in another episode.
All right. So what would this pod be without us talking about a little current events and the goings on between Trump and Elon? How do you think that went? I know they had some technical issue at front, and to be honest, I didn't see the whole thing. I just caught the highlights. Did you happen to see it?
I caught some highlights. I do want to watch the whole thing. 2 hours of Trump is challenging, but I guess there's some Elon in there too, which is what actually my most intrigue is around, is to listen to Elon. And yeah, so I caught a few, and we were talking about it off. I love how you mentioned the Trumpisms, and yeah, he's like such a character, like just like a cartoon character almost. But yeah, I thought it was. I guess the thing that struck me the most is that Elon would really just put himself out there. I mean, not that he doesn't. That's one of the things I really like about him. He just says what he thinks. I mean, that whole Bob Iger thing where he was up there of, "You're going to bribe me with money? Go F yourself." Hi, Bob. I just think that's so refreshing, especially after what we've gone through with the suppression of people's opinions. And really, one of the things I like about Elon, and he's very much in alignment with Jordan Peterson, is like Jordan Peterson said something once, and I think that Elon encapsulates this, is like, in order to think properly, I need to be willing to insult you. And that's a really powerful statement, because that's what Elon does on like this grand scale. Like, he has, and he bought Twitter, so basically he could say this stuff at scale, at like, I want to tell the world and I don't want to be censored. And he says very sometimes inflammatory things, and honestly not stuff I always agree with, but at least he says it, and he's thinking freely and not tiptoeing around in a conversation of like, I don't want to insult this person. Maybe if I say it this way, it's going to insult them or make them feel uncomfortable. It's like, as long as like you have a good relationship with yourself and you have good intention, you're not looking to insult anybody. Sometimes people will get insulted by what you say, but it's like, hey, I didn't mean it that way. I'm just speaking my opinion. So I know I kind of went on a tirade there, but I just think it's great that those conversations are happening in a free way. That's my overall take on it, Eddie. What do you think?
No, I agree. I always think about the fact that, there's you should be able to have, to your point, you should be able to have these discussions. You should be able to get in there and really not pull any punches, but not in a domineering, aggressive way, but just to really get your thought out and hope that the person on the other side, or the people on the other side, not because they're on the other side of your opinion, but just the people you're having conversation with, are able to really internalize that, listen to you wholeheartedly, and then give you feedback based on their experience or their opinion. And just that seems incredibly foreign today. I just, like, that's so hard to find. And so for us to be able to put on a podcast and speak for an hour, it's because we're having conversation. Like, we're diving into things, we're getting real specific, and yeah, it might be easier for you and I because A, we're kind of used to it. B, that's the kind of frame that we live from, and we also get along. So we will hold space for each other. I listen to you, you listen to me. I know that you're listening to me, and I'm certainly listening to you. That just that, like, those ground rule basic things, it just seems like it's lacking. And when we stop the recording and I go off into the world, and I'm just speaking about me, I don't feel like I do that. I don't feel like I can have those kinds of conversations because I'm concerned about the inability, and this isn't a holier than thou statement. It's just, I'm concerned about the inability of others as I move through the world to take the emotion out. And I think that the more I've thought about this, and that you're bringing this up, it's making me think of that. The more you're able to take emotion out of it, and you've been really specific and upfront about what was it you said, that something to the effect of the uselessness of anger. It's not a good emotion that serves you, and it's just, that's something that I've heard you say, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, I call it something a little bit different, but don't do that, because an emotion is not going to help you. It's not getting us through to the next thing, or to a mutual understanding, or to a resolution, or to whatever it is. That right there is an immediate wall, and we're not going to get anywhere. And so then, that's how I go through life, and I think about, well, I can't really have too many meaningful conversations. Unfortunately, I'd love to, and I will dip my toe in, and I'll say a thing, or I'll put myself out there, and I'll test the waters with especially new people that I'm not familiar with, but I kind of can pick up on there might be a chance for us to vibe in this way. I just wish it was more like that. And pulling it back to the way it is now with, or on this conversation with Elon and Trump, they absolutely should have a platform to speak and to share and to talk without, having fourth grade reactionary finger pointing at them, right? Which unfortunately the media is great at doing that. They're there to stir the pot. They're there to point fingers on both sides. This isn't a one-sided thing. That's how they make their money, I guess. So to find a platform, or to be able to, this is my platform with you, is to be able to do this and have this conversation. This is my outlet to feel like, okay, I'm talking to one in a small group of people that I know, where I can have a conversation. I'm being listened to, not because I need to be listened to, but because usually fruitful things come from this back and forth. And so that's what I see. And I'm sure that conversation between Elon and Trump, although I agree, I've heard enough Trumpisms. I've heard enough of his style that I know what he's about. I know what he's pretty much going to say. I know the finger pointing he's going to do, but let the guys have their platform and speak their minds.
Yeah. It's interesting, that I used to have a real challenge with anger. Broke my hand twice punching things in high school. Not people. Have hit people, but not kinds of that. But it is, kind of coming back to Trump with the anger thing. I think people are frustrated, and frustration is kind of like the first. It's like an iteration of anger. Anger is you go so into the reptilian brain where it's like you can't even cognitively think. when you're in rage, like when people are in rage, that's all just cortisol at the deepest level. So that's why I really try. I mean, I try to go more towards just acceptance because I feel better about things. Does it mean that I don't get frustrated with things? It's like using feelings now as a beacon, using feelings as a guide, right? Like, why am I feeling frustrated right now? It's like really connecting with that. And I know this is a little bit maybe off here, but it's helped me a lot. Some of the mentors that I've had kind of come into my life have helped me connect because we're guys, right? And it's like the men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We're all about solving problems. Women are more about talking about things. And they don't necessarily want problems solved. They just want to be heard. And there's merit in that, right? Like there's total merit in that of just what we're doing here of listening to each other. Like, dude, I'm not asking you to solve my problems, or we're not, we're just here having a nice discussion, right? But back to the point about anger or frustration, I think that what Trump does differently from Elon, I think Elon is genuinely frustrated. I don't know if did you see any of the interviews with him about his kid that went transgender and that? Have you watched any of that? Well, just kind of some discussions, and I watch him online and stuff, and he gets sad. Something happened, and so that's what really turned him against the whole, like, whatever the woke thing is. And he's really so he's deeply affected from a family standpoint, obviously, and I think he's frustrated from a financial standpoint. Even though he's done incredibly well, I think that he sees where things are going, the deficit back to interest rates and all that. Like, kind of going back to interest rates, they're going to have to lower interest rates to lower the national debt because or the interest payments on the debt, which have doubled since 2021. So, anyways, coming back to Elon and feelings, I think it's just great that he that someone that's a little more, I think, conscious, if I would use that word, of feelings and of people. I believe Trump, probably a lot of it is character, The Apprentice, and like he's an actor, he's a politician, but he is a genuine business person too. He's not been a career politician. Politicians are great salespeople, they're great schmoozers, and they will back down to lobbyists and money, which is part of the problem too. But anyways, I guess kind of coming back to that whole conversation, it's just refreshing to see two really successful people and one that's trying to become the leader again of the country, if that is actually real. But I think it's a neat thing to see, and I don't think that we would have seen something like that before Elon bought Twitter. That because everything was kind of so locked up and censored and canceled, and that's very scary. That's kind of stuff frustrates me. I don't get angry because there's nothing I can do about it, but I'm like, man, like, wow, we can't even say things that we want to say, and that's like the First Amendment. Like, that's what freedom is. So, again, my TED Talk stump speech. What do you think, man?
Well, you touched on mentorship, and if we bring it back, obviously we've kind of shared a few people that we pay attention to, look to, learned from. If we pull that back into a real estate perspective, where do you think that role of mentorship sits for the professional agent? Because I've seen it for let me correct myself, more of the established long-term agent, and then also from the perspective of a brand new agent, someone who's getting into the business. Because I always see, so many questions in the groups that I belong to about, should I go with this mentor? Should I go with this brokerage, or should I go with this brokerage? And one of my answers is always, find the spot where you get what you need. So everyone's needs are different, but I always say, look for a place where you can be mentored the way you need to be mentored, right? Because I don't think it's the same for everyone. Some need more hand-holding, more direct contact, more, I have Alex's number and I can call him when I need to, or others no, they've got some great online platforms, and every Tuesday at 3 p.m., I sit down and we meet and we talk. It runs the gamut, of course, but how do you see mentorship in, for those two different kind of avatars, the more established and more of a newer agent coming into the industry?
If I was to approach it and give someone advice as a new agent coming in, not that I would push back on what you said about what they believe they need. I don't even think that most agents know what they need, and that's the truth. In my opinion, I think people, if they're coming, especially new into the industry, and whether or not they have sales skills or not, but if they don't have sales skills especially, they need to be around people that are actually prospecting and having real estate conversations. Baseline, that's where I would start. So whatever company that is, I don't care if it's a small company, a large company, it doesn't matter. It's the people that you're around. So that new agent, you better just, like, we do a morning role play every day. So anybody out there that's watching, that might be a new agent, we have veteran agents that come in, because also it's a cauldron or a space container to help aspiring leaders, because we have people that are in the role play moderate. Like, I have somebody moderating this morning, the role play room. It's become its own thing. My point is drilling. Okay, now the next form that came out is the exclusive buyer broker agreement. Like, how do you have that conversation? What does that look like? You need to actually drill it before you go out and try to show it to somebody, or to get somebody to sign or enroll someone to sign the exclusive buyer broker or a listing agreement or a purchase agreement. I think it's important to have those conversations. So from a mentor standpoint, new agent, I think you need to be around people that are actually doing it. Not only from the standpoint of learning how to do it, but just getting into the cadence of prospecting happens every day. Every day. Not Saturday and Sunday, but actually, by the way, Saturday and Sunday are really good days to prospect, because no one else is doing it, and actually people will pick up their phones. That's another story. But that's a mentor thing, right? Like, I could say, hey, like, grab an hour on a Saturday. You will be amazed at the pickup rate that you get on a Saturday. So that's from a mentor who, I've done it. So I'm not like speaking from, one of the things that bothers me, man, is like these coaches out there that literally have been in the business like 5 years, and have sold themselves maybe, literally sold themselves maybe 40, 60 homes maybe. And they're a coach. And I'm like, okay, you're a coach. So the people are going now, that coach that I've seen them out there on locally, nationally, they're basically taking like a Tom Ferry thing. They're just taking other people's things and saying, this is, you need to do your sphere. Go to Brian Buffini. Like, you can pay the Brian Buffini course, and it'll say, hey, write a note to these people these days. Like, it basically is your whole day. So do that, and you're going to be much better off than with a coach that hasn't done it. So that's why I guess kind of getting into mentors, I was talking with somebody the other day about Tiger Woods. And Gary Player was talking, and Gary Player is very, one of the top 5 greatest ever in golf. And he was saying how he's like, look at Tiger. He won these majors, and he's doing so well. And this is my South African accent. And he's like, then he goes and gets a coach that's never won a tournament. And it's like, yeah, like, what is going on there? But Tiger wanted to get better. So he wanted to change things. anyways, I'm going on a little bit of a side note there, but I think mentors are incredibly important, especially for the new agent. But we were talking about it off, man. Like, I think we all need mentors, and I have them within EXP, my sponsor, others within EXP that I watch and listen to and wanted to be a part of, and that's the reason I joined the company. But then I also have all kinds of mentors, like we mentioned with Elon off. I look at him as a mentor. Like, he got me thinking about first principle thinking. So,
no, this is great. I mean, yeah, I see it kind of segmented in that. I like the combination of, especially, if we bring it back to a practicing real estate agent, to have someone locally that you're connected with, that personally, that you're meeting with, on the specifics of what am I supposed to be doing in order to be a successful real estate agent. I think that's definitely one. And the other, to your point, is we have this wonderful opportunity now to have access to anyone at any time, anywhere, by way of your phone. And then you held up your phone, and for me, it's always been, or last 6, 7, 8, 9 years, 10 years, that I've really looked to even YouTube to just get inspiration as to what are other people doing, and even just the mere mention, because now if it would drop into the context of all of my knowledge, just sometimes all it takes is just that little mention of something slightly different, and it can make all the difference. But of course, you and I have much deeper Rolodexes of content and context. But sometimes all it takes is that one little switch. I'm like, that's really interesting. I haven't thought about that. And like I said, that's all it takes to make a real difference in production, how I go about my day, my mindset, whatever it is. But absolutely, having mentors that are not necessarily your business focus, but just the way you want to live your life and how you see things. And obviously, as we get older, we have different priorities and things we think about more often than not. And so it's always evolving. And I think the idea of having a coach or mentor, someone that is there for you at all stages of your game and of your life. And so when I say game, your business and your life, is incredibly valuable. And to be able to never say, this is it, I know it all, I've got it figured out. Now, you may have 95%, 99% of the real estate game figured out, because a lot of it is repetitive and skill building, and disciplined in terms of doing the things that you need to do. And some of that obviously shifts in terms of kind of what market you're in and who your target is and who you like to speak to, because there's certainly a lot of success in picking one and not necessarily being a jack of all trades and trying to serve everyone. And I've never been a real supporter of that. I think you do your best work when you're very focused into who you're serving, because you know what their problems are, you know what their questions are, you know how to solve their problems, you know how to answer their questions. I think that is really, in my opinion, a goal that agents that I've spoken to and had the pleasure of mentoring is kind of the direction I lead them into, because trying to catch it all and trying to be it all and all that, I just don't think that's, in my opinion, the best way to serve the people that we're looking to serve for their real estate needs.
Yeah. I think, man, the people that I see growing, and I'll just say within the real estate industry, are the ones that are thirsty for knowledge. And they're hungry, they're making calls and they're hustling and all that. But it's the ones that are really always kind of thirsty to understand more and are receptive to other people's opinions, that be careful of who you ask advice from. Are they qualified to give it? That type of thing. Those are the ones that I see not only having more sales and being successful, but having a more balanced life, right? So that's just my observation, and frankly, an observation on myself, and not to give myself any accolades or whatever. As I try to say, I'm very humble, and there's people doing so much more as far as business wise than myself and our team. Do I compare myself? No. Do I aspire for more? Yes. However, it's not necessarily more of just to have more. It's lifestyle and quality of life now that I'm after, because I have gotten to a point where it's like, have a business. We did 21 closings last month. 3 of them were mine. That's a business. And I have created that with some wonderful people. One of my coaches said, this guy paid $2,000 a month, who's my coach for about a year and a half through COVID. And he taught us a couple of really great things. So one of them is the Henry Ford statement. I think it was Henry Ford or Carnegie. It was Zig Ziglar, actually. We don't build businesses, we build people, and people build businesses. And I got it on, it's like, have you got advice from mentors or coaches in the past, and you kind of like, they told you something and you're like, and then later on you're like, oh, I really get that now. And that has rung true to me, that first we got to build ourselves. We got to build leadership and discipline within ourselves. Then we enroll others in that same journey with us, and we help them grow from the lessons we've learned. And that's how the business grows. Like, that literally is how the business grows, is being able to mentor and coach and guide and support people. So many, I think it's just like, oh, I give them leads. It's like, I've learned that. Like, people come to you for leads, they will leave you for leads. So that's just kind of.
You really hit it on the head with the way I see it. Is what a pleasure to be able to share with others what has worked for you. I mean, that to me is the cornerstone. I mean, that to me is everything. And the real estate specific skills can be taught, can be learned. But to me, that's secondary. I think, helping the person that you're responsible for, to a certain extent, thrive, find their balance in their life, identify what their real goals are with this thing called real estate. What does that mean? What are you trying to accomplish? Not just the financial, but just what kind of life are you trying to live? And to be able to guide through something like that is just such a blessing and such an honor to be able to do that. And I mean, do you see it similarly? I mean, do you see it way past? It sounds like you do.
It's purpose, Eddie, right? It's like the ultimate purpose. Like, I get more I lost satisfaction from closings. Dude, I have closings now. I don't even know when they happen. And I'm not saying this as like to try to be anything. Like, it's the truth. And so I don't get any rush. I don't get anything. I'm grateful. Yeah, I'm grateful. However, my point is that I get more deep satisfaction from seeing someone else get their first sale, their first $1 million sale. You have a couple agents on the team, man, they're going to make over $200,000 this year. Like, that just warms my heart. I mean, I know how much I'm going to make if they're making that much, but most people, right? Agents get into the business like, what is there for? They want to make $100,000. They got agents on a team making a couple $100,000. That is, and these people are growing. I see these people developing, and not the way that I don't have any agenda of like, you need to develop this way. It's just growth. And I've had their wives, their husbands come to me and be like, man, they're different. They're different. Our family is stronger. Like, that is what matters, man. That is purpose. The closings and all that. And that's why I was kind of saying earlier, I was going to say earlier that I've seen some people that are successful in our business that are selling, lots of homes or really high-end homes, and everybody thinks that they're the bomb as far as that metric that they're measuring for success. Sales. I know these people. They're not happy. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, because I think you reach that point where I reach to a certain degree of that the sales don't do it anymore. They don't give you the same sense of value or worth. And so that trap of like, when I get there, everything's going to be great when I'm number one, or I do this, or I've sold the biggest homes or whatever. Some of them I know, and I'm not saying everybody like that, but my point is overarchingly, I know from a personal experience that if that's all it was, that's going to get old real quick. It did, and it does, and it will. So I think developing people, and I think that is a very purposeful thing. And just lastly, Eddie, we have a saying within our group: it matters. Like, people talk about how messed up the world is or whatever, and if anybody's seen that meme out there, is like, you change the world by changing yourself and helping others. Like, not by yelling into the wind that Trump is a dick, or that Biden has senility, or that Harris is this or that. That's not going to change the world. Nobody cares about your opinion, But what does matter is people care about whether you care about them or not, and whether or not you're genuinely helping them to grow. That's what changes slowly that butterfly effect of the world, in my opinion.
Well, that was wonderfully, wonderfully said, and I think we'll leave it on that. I think that's the sharp point that we end this with, and that's the spirit of what we're doing right here. That's the spirit of this show, is to share, to hopefully make an impact on others, whether it's the way they live their life day to day, or the dollar amount that they have. They may have goals for themselves that they want in their pocket. But either way, if we can make a positive impact in their life and their business, I think, going back to something we said, we're just here to share. We hope it helps you, and we hope it helps your day along just that much better. So thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it. If you haven't, if we haven't subscribed yet, and it's something that you're really enjoying, please consider subscribing. We've got a few more episodes coming up for you, of course, and we're dedicated to recording these conversations every single week for you. So in the meantime, we wish you a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next one.